This is the Objective Centrist, and we're live. Sorry it's been so long, but I am fully moved out of my secured bunker in Northern California, and I am safely relocated to civilization here in Southern California in sunny North Hollywood. And interrupting my vacation is nothing other than an insurrection in America. We have reports that in Burns, Oregon, as little as 15 and as many as 150 militiamen from around the United States have decided to take control of a wildlife refuge. It's the size of about 100 cattle ranches, so it's very, very large. Its exact size is unknown. I don't know exactly how they're controlling it, other than they just found the keys that they needed to get into the buildings. They haven't destroyed anything. They're associated with the Bundy Ranch in Bunkerville, Nevada. The leader's name is Bundy. He is the son of Cliven Bundy, the guy who was in a standoff with the BLM guys in Nevada last year. So they've since recruited a number of other famous militiamen, some guy from Michigan, and then that famous anti-Muslim racist guy from the Southwest, a few other random people that they picked up at a rally. They had a rally for two men, the Hammonds with a D, who were convicted of arson in 2005-ish because they were trying to cover up a slaughter of about 30 deer, and they were generally just causing a muck, and they wanted to, for whatever reason, start a fire. They claimed it was so they could fend off a larger fire and that it didn't damage the winter feed for their herd or something strange, and then they claimed that it went out of control, but in fact their little cousin was convinced to start the fire, and he was involved in the prosecution. And so the entire prosecution of the Hammonds is seemingly legitimate, and they were told recently that the sentence that they served, which was 5 years in prison, wasn't long enough, and that they needed to report to California to do additional years. At this time, the militiamen showed up and protested this as an overarching, reach of the federal government. And then after one of their rallies, they got around and they sung Kumbaya or whatever. Actually, I think it was Amazing Grace, but it got everyone fired up, and they said that they were going to take some territory. It's possible that they had this plan beforehand, but as it stands, they basically got a bunch of, kind of local people, protesters, if you want to call them that. I don't call them protesters because they were armed, and you're not actually engaging in peaceful protest that's protected in the Constitution if you're carrying weapons. So I'm not really sure what to call them other than maybe insurrectionists or terrorists. They haven't killed anybody yet. So I'm actually personally reluctant to call them terrorists because they haven't used violence. But insurrectionist party, I think, is accurate at this time, and they're certainly not planning on going anywhere. They've made claims that they are capable of staying there for a few years. As I said, they're on a wildlife refuge. It's really cold out there right now. We know they're actually having trouble finding timber to burn, that the sagebrush in the area is still wet and covered in snow because of the time of year, that they're having trouble making fires. But the FBI is in control of the situation, if you want to say that, yet they haven't responded. The road leading into the wildlife refuge is actually only being blockaded by the militiamen themselves. The militiamen have allowed the media access, and they've found that the buildings are intact. They have declined to give an exact number of people that are there, but it's assumed that it's at least 10 to 15. The numbers have been reported as high as 150. We're not really sure. But the situation as it stands now seems to be odd because not a lot has been done. There's been no Waco-esque response, and as there shouldn't be. A CNN analyst, well, I don't even want to call him that because I'm not a fan of CNN, but an ex-military analyst who actually works for CNN occasionally, and this is how I got this report, said the same thing that I'm thinking, influenced from The Art of War, that right now what we need to do is achieve a harmonious victory, not a swift and deft victory. We need to look really good when we win this, because this could get sticky really quickly. So what we honestly need to do is basically ignore these people, put up a fence that's pretty tight, and let them do their thing and have their little camp out, and when they're ready, they'll come out and they'll get arrested. For example, some of the people that are there are other ranchers from around the nation that are not native to Burns, Oregon. They're outsiders, and they're not particularly welcome in the community. The community's not happy with them there. The community's generally afraid of them. They're outsiders telling them how to do their business, just like anybody else, you know. So they're not welcome there at all, and they're not really going to find much help. Maybe a little bit, but it's rural Oregon anyway, so it's not like they can go to the local soup kitchen or anything. And the moment they step off of that ranch, they'll probably be arrested. So the best thing to do right now, according to me, and according to other analysts and the sheriffs and the FBI that end up actually conducting this operation, is to basically just leave them alone and wait for them to get really cold and really hungry and give themselves up. So that's my take, and I have my arch nemesis from Twitter here, Democracy Theater, Rich Scott, and I think that he's got some things to say about this, so I'd like to open up the floor to discuss that. So Rich, take it away.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I said when we talked earlier too, right? I said they're going to ignore it. They have to ignore it. One of the reasons is because we have a oops, hey, my ball. We have a black president, and you know, he can't react the same way a white president would have done. I posted a little 20-minute thing on my Facebook page, Democracy Now. I mean, Democracy Theater, Democracy Now. That's a Freudian slip. Where I said it's going to be, because I'm much more interested in how authorities would react had it been, African Americans, or whether or not CNN would have continued to show the documentary with Steve Jobs if this had been, it had been African Americans occupying a federal building in, because of Tamir Rice, the decision not to prosecute the police officer that executed and killed the little boy on the playground, right? So, I don't think that they should just ignore them. I think it's worth having a discussion about mandatory minimum sentencing. I don't know enough about that particular verdict, but it seems to me that they were prosecuted, they won the case. The federal government was not satisfied with the sentencing, or they felt that he wasn't sentenced within the guidelines, and I'm in general against mandatory minimum sentencing. So, on that issue, I'm with the guys if that's what they're protesting, just not the way that they're protesting.
Well, I generally agree with all of that. I also, just to take it sort of backwards, I also agree that minimum sentencing, and we need to abolish mandatory minimums. So as per that statement, not only do we support the Hammonds, but the Hammonds, with a D, don't support the Bundy militia group that's taken over the wildlife refuge in Burns, Oregon. So what's going on here is a bunch of outsiders coming into Burns and telling them how to be. I don't think it's going to fly.
This is, like I said, I have this little, I put up a little podcast. I'm really interested in trying to, look, from the moment Barack Obama was elected, right? There was this nuttiness of elderly white guys were going crazy. They were buying guns. The rhetoric just went through the roof. I mean, it was crazy during Bill Clinton's 8 years as president. If you look at the rhetoric, but it was nothing compared to the firestorm that Barack Obama ran into, and they're looking for provocation. They want this fight. These are like ISIL in Syria, right? They want to pick a fight. They want the federal government to come at them with guns, and then they can claim, here it is, they're coming for our guns, right? This is all happening at the same time that the president is thinking about taking some executive action on gun something with gun restrictions. So, dragging it out. I don't know. We'll see, but it's really going to be interesting to see just how crazy people are going to get. Yeah.
Well, I think that, again, I agree that this will create...
Well, let's talk about something we don't agree on.
Well, no, let's make a point. Let's continue to make points. So this will create a debate about how we should prosecute people who commit these acts. I think that we finally crossed that road with this instance, where basically immediately major media outlets were calling the response hypocritical. The interesting thing, like I said, is that what's going on right now is the way that it should be operated. You should conduct this operation, 30 seconds. You conduct this operation peacefully and let these people get hungry and give themselves up in order to win the war in the Sun Tzu Art of War manner. But what needs to happen is this needs to be declared a terrorist event, and then...
No,
excuse me. I said, I'm just looking at the timer. I got nervous. I've already said it's not terrorism because no violence has been used, but it needs to be labeled sedition. Sorry, go ahead.
See, I want to take it down a notch. I want to take the rhetoric down a notch. I want to take the way that we go after people that protest. Seriously, if the people that work in that building can do their jobs in some other building, then let them occupy the building, let them protest, let them burn themselves out. I just want that tactic applied towards the Occupy movement. I want that tactic, against all protesters, not just white, gun-toting, land-owning people, right? And that's really the only thing that bothers me with this. I think this is exactly the right response. I like the fact that we're taking it down a notch, and it shouldn't matter if it's not a day off tomorrow. If the people that work there in that area can do their job and they can find another place for the people that are in the building, then fucking let them burn themselves out. Let them have their protest, and as long as they're not hurting anybody, hey, who cares? I think there's seems to be a concerted effort in the liberal media to just basically not talk about it. But I am, interested in why they're not doing the same kind of coverage that they would do to an African American protest with guns.
Absolutely, and I think that's the point where we disagree. I think that when these people come in with a political agenda, which they've obviously demonstrated, they've given interviews, they're armed, and they've taken possession of federal buildings.
But it's all politics. All protest is politics, yeah.
1 second. And then in that case, political agenda, the armed protest, call it a protest, and the repurposing of government property, I think we need to call that sedition. Go ahead, sorry.
All right, so my problem in arguing for these numbnuts, right, is that they're not pure in their heart, right, because they're coming there to just provoke a fight, and they just pick this one, you know, it looks good to them. That's what they're there. They're not pure in their heart. But if they were pure in their heart, and if they were down there and said, hey, wait a minute, these guys went to jail. Fuck you if you didn't like the sentence. The judge gave him that sentence. We have to trust our legal system. We can't keep undermining our institutions with this bullshit. And that was the sentence. And you're the federal government. You have unlimited amounts of money. You can't go after a private citizen like that. The guy was fucking sentenced. Yeah, so you got your conviction. Yeah, you didn't get the time that you wanted, but so what? That's our system. Let's trust our judges. That, unfortunately, that's not what they're there to argue. They're just there to have a fight with the federal government because they don't like our black president, right? So that's the problem. So I'm annoyed that I'm, you know, trying to, or I'm actually arguing for them. But, you know, that's how I see it.
Well, okay. So what they're doing is motivated by racism and homosexuality.
Yes.
As much as it is motivated by some obtuse political theory that they got from, you know, Grover Norquist or one of these asshats. But
what are you saying that that's not a legitimate point?
Sedition and not just some sort of like haha protest prank thing where we slap them all on the wrist and send them home. I'm just trying to clarify. So what sort of sentence, let's just assume really quickly that after some hilariously short stint in these buildings, they freeze their asses off and they want out and they get arrested. What sort of sentence do you think that they should receive? Should they be tried in a military tribunal?
No, I think they should get a fucking fine. That's it. If there's nothing, if they destroy no property, if they hurt no people, and I'm a little more lenient if they, you know, destroyed a door or something like that, but so property, then if they hurt anybody, then I think a fine for whatever, obstructing a workplace with federal employee. I don't fucking know, but no, they certainly shouldn't have any sentencing. Again, I would like us to fucking tone it down a little bit and let people be people again. And you know, again, if they were pure at heart, that's what they would be protesting. They're not. But I still don't believe that we should, you know, I don't think we should give them the martyrs they want, but either by sentencing them to prosecuting them to some stiff sentences, nor should we take up the fight with them with guns and give it to them that way. I think we should just fucking ignore them until they freeze themselves, you know, or they're so hungry or thirsty, whatever it is that they need, and then take them out and then fucking, you know, give them a fine and then send them the fuck home. And just let us all point at them and laugh at them.
So what you're suggesting may not be ridiculous. I'm not saying that it's ridiculous, but don't you think that would be called white privilege?
Right. No, listen. That's how, again, I started out by saying, I like the way that the federal government is approaching this, right? I just wish that they would approach all protests like this. So I wish that they would have done, if they would have handled the Occupy movement of Wall Street back in the day. I wish that they would treat the protest of Black Lives Matter activists today like that. I wish that they would treat the peace movement when they protest like that. That's how it should be. So yes, it is white privilege right now, but I think that we should look at it and we should say, no, We don't want you to start treating everybody like we're treating African Americans and brown people. We want everybody to be treated like white people. We're not looking for a race to the bottom. We're looking to a race up to wherever the fuck we are. Human rights. You know, white rights should be fucking human rights, you know? So that's where it's at.
Okay. I think I understand your position a little bit better now. So let me try to rephrase. So what it seems to me like you're doing is you're trying to say the reform needs to start somewhere, and we need to stop demonizing protesters. So at some point, we need to look at these activities as a protest and not armed insurrection, sedition. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It's just protest. I wish they wouldn't come with weapons, but that's how they did it. And we're in America, and weapons are part of our it's in our Constitution for whatever reason. Okay, fine. I just want every protest to be treated like that, not just these white guys. So I also want the unarmed Black Lives Matter kids to be treated with this kind of respect or with this kind of distance. If they're not destroying everything and they're sitting in the street and there's fucking ways to get around it, then just direct traffic around it. Like, fucking let people protest. That's a part of a democracy. That's a part of how societies move. That's a part of the way we get our grievances out into the open, and we start discussions, and we have a lot to protest about, and we have a lot of things we need to discuss. So let it fucking begin, and let's try to take it down a notch and stop treating everything like it needs to be, you know, crushed with an iron fist.
So I agree with that last bit, like, so much, and I want to, again, sort of attack that backwards, and I want to first say that I totally agree that at some point we need to stop demonizing protesters, and we need to let protesters, emphasis on the word protester, protest. But and that being said, I'm going to encapsulate that and shove it to the side and get to the meat of my disagreement. I think that what's going on here is very clearly not a protest because they're armed and they took federal property. So if they took federal property without being armed, the same thing, that's what hippies do when they chain themselves to trees and BLM. Okay? So Julia Butterfly climbed into a tree and stayed there for a year and a half. That's no different than taking a federal building. But there are other consequences that associated with that building once it becomes occupied by, when it's supposed to be occupied by its employees. So the tree that Julia Butterfly occupied as a protest to logging didn't require a staff of people to, operate it. And on Monday, tomorrow morning, there is supposed to be people showing up to work. And so if the protest that, by the way, it's not a protest because they're armed, but if whatever's going, the takeover continues into tomorrow, then it also ceases to be a victimless protest. And all of a sudden we now have people who are out work. They're going to get furloughed. So locals are going to lose money. That won't happen very long. Who knows when the furlough will start? But I imagine if this standoff continues any length amount of time, the federal workers are supposed to be there will get furloughed.
Why? You can find
they're not fired. That's how governments work.
It doesn't have to be like that. That's what I'm saying. We need to.
That's how governments work, though.
No, it's not.
I'm not saying it has to be like that, but they'll say, look, if it becomes a 6-month standoff,
well,
they're going to be paying these guys. They're just going to furlough the shit out of them. They're like, okay, guys.
I don't know. What are these buildings? Do you know what these buildings are used for?
Yeah, they're like bird watching sanctuaries. It's wildlife sanctuary. It's one of them is a museum. A few of them are homes for the people who the rangers and shit that work there. I don't even know if they're actually supposed to come back tomorrow, but I'm assuming they are. I'm just saying. So my point, if I can summarize it, is that one, they're armed, and two, it's not a victimless protest, even if it is a protest. So what they're doing is, in effect, totally different than the sort of protests that we have classically looked at as not needing to be prosecuted with the harsh, heavy-handed techniques like pepper spray and rubber bullets that we've seen used against Black Lives Matter, and environmental protests, going back to the 60s. So I think that this is a place where we can actually draw a line and say, you know what, this is not a protest. This is an insurrection. It's an attempted insurrection.
Now you just fucking...
But I do agree that at some point we need to stop demonizing protesters. But I don't think these are protesters. They're armed. And
okay, but this
protest, even if we agree that whatever.
Again, so that's exactly what I'm saying, right? I hate that it's these people, right? Because they're not pure at heart. They're not actually protesting, even if they bring their guns. And if you're allowed to carry an open carry, whatever, and that, then they can bring their fucking guns to their protest. If they threaten somebody with a gun to get into the building, it becomes a whole different story. So there's all kinds of caveats. I haven't come up with all of them. I'm sure I can think of more as I go along. I'm not in any way trying to help this out. What I am trying to say, or help them out, what I am trying to say is, if the federal government and local police and so forth can show this kind of restraint with this at best borderline protest, right? Then it should be possible that they can show that in all other instances. In this case, I think that there is lost revenue for the museum. There's some financial damages. These people should all be held responsible for that in some kind of way. But no, I don't think that we should send them to jail. And no, I don't, for this. But yeah, sure, there should be a fine and there could be financial damages. I totally agree that they should, they should be held liable for that. But again, that's also a borderline thing, because I don't want protesters to be afraid of protesting because there's a financial threat against them for somebody losing money because you're having a political protest. So,
Except these aren't protesters. These are armed men. You're right to
hold on. You have a right to bear arms there, right?
I can speak for 2 minutes. I'm timing us here. It's seriously not protesting if you've got guns. So why are we calling these guys protesters if they have guns?
Why is it not a protest because you have guns if you have a right to have open carry in that state? In all instances. Doesn't say you don't have a right.
Doesn't mean that you're not breaking the First Amendment. Open carry is totally separate. They're saying that their way that they're interpreting the Second Amendment adds some bonus to the First Amendment. The First Amendment says peaceful protesting. So you're saying that peaceful protest.
Okay, you are allowed
carrying a firearm and taking federal buildings.
They're squatting, right?
I generally agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, that's all they're doing, right? And what they're their excuse, and again, I'm just saying these people are not pure at heart, right? If they were pure at heart, they would, I'm putting myself in their shoes. They are, there's these gun rights or whatever the fuck is. It's very important for that to them. So they're protesting with their guns. So they have them over their shoulders. They're carrying them as they are supposed to carry them in that state, even on federal land, right? Because you're allowed to have guns now on federal land. So as long as they're in the law, as long as nobody pulled out a gun to get into any of the buildings, and as long as they're not holding out people, the federal whatever, with guns, pointing it at them and saying, no, you can't come in, by using their guns, that's a different story. I know it all. It's how the fuck can a police officer in this case, and this is on them, by the way, not the police officers, but how can a police officer know what's going on when they bring guns to a protest, and it makes it really precarious, and it makes it fucking crazy. And I think these people are fucking nuts. Let there be no doubt about that, right? I'm just saying, what I care about is that there's a tactic being displayed by the police. I think that they should transfer that tactic towards all other protests. And I don't think that we should give these people as long as they're not using the guns in any threatening manner. And how the fuck is a gun not threatening and all by itself? I know it's this fucking complicated shit. I don't think that they haven't done anything yet that where I think they should be serving time, and that it should be treated in any other manner than it's a political protest.
Okay, well, in the 3 to 2 minutes that you spoke there, I was unable to confirm or deny whether or not Second Amendment protection is offered to protesters who don't engage in violent activity but are armed with firearms. So it's actually really sticky. I don't know, and I can't answer that question at this time. The feeling is that you might actually be correct. I'm surprised about that, but as it stands, let's just say you're right. And having guns at a protest while they're loaded, as long as you don't pull the trigger and shoot somebody with them, it's not a violation of the First Amendment.
I don't think, as long as you can't point it at anybody either, right? You can have it over your shoulder. You can have it holstered.
Let's not get into that gray area. Let's not even go there. But let's just say you definitely can't shoot people with it at a protest. So,
no
right? So if the government shows up on Monday and says you got to leave, and they shoot somebody, what do you call it?
Then that's a different story. It's a totally different story.
And you would probably call that
murder, right? And they should be prosecuted for whatever, shooting a police officer.
Okay, so how do you define an insurrection?
Well, so here's the difference. If they block the doors, right, and then all the guns are like in the center, but then they're blocking the doors, and they won't let the police in, but at no point is any gun at any point being pointed at a police officer. Let's say they just put them all on a fucking table in the middle of the building, right? And then they chain themselves to the outside. Then I don't believe that they used the guns in a threatening manner. Now, if they unholster it and point it at anybody, a civilian or a police officer, that changes everything. And that's why this is really some weird shit. But I'm 100% sure, for instance, in Texas, that you are allowed to bring a gun with you to a protest. And in many, 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 many other states in this union, can you do that?
Okay, I didn't know that, so let's just say that that's true. Let me complex the situation a little.
No, because it's not complex enough.
Oh yeah, let's abstract the guns a little bit. Let's say that they're not actually guns these guys are carrying. Let's say that they wired the whole place with explosives.
That's a difference.
No, they haven't pressed the button. Nobody's going to get hurt because nobody's in the buildings. But they wired the place for explosives.
Okay, again.
Obviously it sounds like you think that would change the story, right?
Of course, but that's again. I think that
I'm not trying to go down that road. I'm just testing the water here, okay?
No, but hold on. I just want to point out that I think that the gun thing is a fucking dumbass thing to bring to a protest too.
Why?
I don't think. Hold on.
You just endorsed it fully.
No. Hold on. I don't think that it should be legal either. I'm just saying that in this case, They brought the guns. It's not illegal, so therefore it shouldn't be. I know that you and I look at it, so let me clarify. I know that when you and I look at that, you were like, "What the fuck? You're a gun? That's not a protest." But I am very sure that in that state, bringing the gun with them to a protest doesn't make it, it's not illegal. I am thinking that the moment they take it out, unholstered, pointed, that's it.
I'm not going to argue your point. I'm going to assume that you're correct, that bringing a gun to a protest is not illegal in Texas. This is actually in Oregon, by the way. But let's just say that you're correct, like wherever. Yeah, let's say maybe it's California, whatever. Let's talk about what it means to take possession of a federal building in protest. Big bunny ears going on here. So I always like to extract things. So Julia Butterfly was a hippie girl who painted her face and was a California girl, and she went up to Northern California and sat in a tree so that people couldn't cut it down on BLM land, which was rented to a timber company. She stayed up there for a year and a half, and people used to have to, wheel her up food and stuff. Soon as she got down, she was arrested. She was arrested. Okay, it was illegal to take possession of the tree. So it wasn't protesting in that case. Why is it protesting in this case?
Why are you wanting me to make an argument for?
Absolutely.
Well, I disagree. She was protesting. I don't know why she was arrested.
Okay, so taking possession,
especially she sat in a fucking tree and did almost nothing to nobody.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the fact that she didn't I've said this, so I'm just trying to understand. Didn't disenfranchise any government workers because it was contracted out to a timber company and they still had plenty of trees to cut and so on and so forth. So Julia Butterfly's cool in your book because no workers were inconvenient. So tomorrow, when people try to show up to work and they can't go into work and they're met with firearms, they are not shot with firearms, but they're told, "Hey, get out of here, buddy." Then what do you call that?
Actually, I take it back. So, hold on. I am totally against the whole gun thing. I just wanted to point out that it probably wasn't illegal in that state even if they were standing in front of the governor's office, that they could bring guns with them at a protest in that state legally. That's all I was pointing out with that gun. I'm not saying it's a good fucking idea. I'm not saying that it doesn't up the ante a million times. And I think that it should be illegal to have guns at protests, because at that point it does get hard to distinguish between the beginning of a revolution that I may or may not be for, versus just a normal protest within the boundaries of a democracy,
I think that's where this gets really important, though. So where you're defining protest is to include the commandeering of federal buildings. I think so.
You can take over your universities. You can shut down highways. You can do whatever that you take. That is what protesting is. Unions should
I don't think it is. That's not legally covered in your First Amendment rights. Is it? I'm pretty sure they arrested all those people, Black Lives Matter, they got and went down on the freeway.
Right, but it should be nothing more than a jaywalking ticket. That you should be treated.
I hear you. No, now we're starting to get into the I agree with you situation where as long as you hand these people a fucking ticket or something,
that's all it should be.
I mean anyone that involves in anything even remotely similar to that. But when you take possession of the building, which is at least a ticketable offense, let's say, at least a ticketable offense.
I don't fucking know. I don't know the law. I'm just saying they're just protesting. Unfortunately, it's legal for them to bring guns with them to that thing. It could get really fucking tricky, but they should not go to jail for that. But yet they should get a ticket.
Wow. So you're okay. So they should get it. Okay. So it's some sort of violation.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we found where we disagree. I think it's a very serious violation. I think it's a crime against the Federation.
Okay.
But I really think that you have a point about whether or not to prosecute because they may be martyred. However, I think that's a complexity. That's not a literal translation of what actually happened and what does the law say and how does our language describe these people. I would say, well, they're seditionists and they're trying to start an insurrection. And I agree with you that they may not actually have done the acts required to call it an insurrection because they haven't shot anybody or used any acts of violence against a human. But tomorrow, when people try to show up to work, assuming they're supposed to show up to work tomorrow, what do you call that? And I would say you at least call that sedition. It's against the Federation. It's punishable by 30 years to life. It's possible you can get the death penalty for it. It's often tried in a military.
Why did they take over the building?
I'm not saying this needs to happen. I'm just saying this is what it's normally called. And it's to look at this and say, well, we shouldn't do it because their heart's not in the right place or something like that, or their skin's the wrong.
No, I'm saying that's not what they're doing. They're not there to overthrow the government, or I mean that they want.
They specifically said that exactly what they're there to do. They want to take the land and give it back to the people, take it away from the government, and they have claimed the government has no legitimacy on that land anymore. So what do you call that?
Dumbasses.
Yeah, okay. We call them dumbasses. That's definitely what we call them.
They're fucking dumbasses.
I'm not saying I don't see it. I'm just saying I think it's a little bit closer to sedition and insurrection than you think it is. At least that's what I think we disagree about.
Yeah, no, fine.
We'll agree tomorrow if
you can call it revolution, an attempted revolution. I still only think they should get a fucking ticket.
Attempted revolution is a ticketable offense.
Yeah,
that is. That's a good one.
These are like the guys in that documentary that where these two dumbass Muslims ran into an FBI agent that fed him all this shit. Like the two guys were too dumb to tie their shoes, but suddenly they were, capable of buying Stingray rockets from somewhere, right? So I don't know. Insurrection. I mean, I just would fucking call it whatever you want. I still want the tactic that's being applied by the police against these guys to be applied against peace protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters, and anybody else that feels like protesting the government. If
I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm gonna say that we found a point where we disagree, and we found a point where we agree. I think that the soft-handedness of this response needs to be mirrored in further operations.
Well, so do you want him to get 30 years in jail?
Against when you deal with a protester. But I think we definitely disagree about whether or not this is a protest or an attempted insurrection by a bunch of seditionists.
So you want him 30 years in jail for this?
What do I want?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think the federal government should do?
Out our American citizenship and go move to Russia or wherever Iran or whatever the fuck kind of weirdo theocracy place where they want to live. But that's what I personally want. I want them to just leave. I want people like this that you think that the Bible is a living, a document that needs to influence the Constitution, and that the Constitution isn't a living document. You're a fucking dogmatist, and you should go where dogmatists are appreciated. This has never been appreciated here for hundreds of years. Check out the history of the country. But what do we do with these people is a really dicey question. And I think it will depend on how it finishes. If suddenly they said, okay, I give up, I want to go home now, I think we should arrest them. And I think they should be given a generally light sentence. If they stay there tomorrow when people are supposed to be there and they take control and people can't go to work, then they should start accruing fines, very serious fines. Very, very, like the cost of furloughing somebody that needs to be completely, you're starting to paying motherfuckers salaries right now. I'm not going to argue
against you.
Then they need to be charged as a seditionist.
I'm not going to argue against you. I think they're assholes. I think they're dumb people. I am. I wish they were protesting.
I think if they point a gun at somebody and take that building, they should be given 30 years.
Yeah, no, I can't argue against it. Like, I'm not
building and point guns at people that tell you need to leave and be let go. I mean, it's not how it works. Let me abstract it again, as I like to do. Let's say that they just so happened to take the White House. That for some strange fucking reason, the White House was empty. Maybe everyone was on the lawn, you know, or the Oval Office happened to be empty. And one of these assholes just walks in and they're like, the Oval Office is mine now. Ha ha ha. Just be like, nah, dude.
2.5 seconds.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck if that's your protest or what the fuck you think that is. Boom, you're done, dude. You don't fuck around like that. And this is one of those places where I don't think you fuck around like that. You want to take a federal building and point weapons at people that are telling you to leave after time. For a few days, okay, camping trip is over. Get the fuck out of here. And you don't? Man, I can tell you how I would deal with somebody if they were on my land and they wouldn't leave.
No, but they haven't pointed weapons at anybody. I'm not going to argue. Like, again, I'm not going to argue against it. I'm just that they were idiots when they were, you know, protesting for his dad, and his son is certainly not any smarter, and they're not actually there to protest the mandatory minimum sentencing of their friend, and their friends have already reported to jail. So, you know, this is totally just about something else. So they're using a very good cause as an excuse to promote their dumbass bullshit. But I will take any occasion to point out good police strategy and use it in a way where I think they should, you know, extrapolate that into the rest of society. And I think this is a good one. So at least let's collectively give praise to the police department in Burns, Oregon. Collectively give praise to the FBI for learning about how to handle this and not having a Waco-esque response. Let's give praise to the local people of Burns, Oregon and the surrounding areas who have publicly condemned this activity. And fuck everyone else. Yeah. Let's do that. That's my statement. Yeah. With that, I bid you good night. No, seriously though, I probably got to get going. So it's been a good show. Thanks for coming on. Is there any other closing statement you'd want to have about this fucking debacle? No, I want to fucking talk. I want to talk about. I am really. I want to go do something fun tonight, but I want to get back to figure out what's going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I think the next show we should have is a powder keg that's about to explode, including what's going on in Turkey, the tumbling oil prices. This is big stuff happening, and it is. Yeah, tune in next time for a show about these because definitely the price of oil and the storm brewing between the Shiite and the Sunni countries, namely Saudi Arabia and Iran, is a powder keg waiting to explode. So hopefully next time we're able to pull in my Israeli contact and have some political theory from the desert. And like I said, with that, any of the watchers who may have enjoyed this broadcast, I am the Objective Centrist. You can like me on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube and on Twitter. That you can also like and follow my arch nemesis, Rich Scott from Democracy Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So feel free to like the pages, share the pages, tell us we're stupid, comment. We love it. Well, I know we're stupid. Just, you know, say something funny. Yeah, I just did. Yeah, be funny. Don't be a troll. Be funny. Or give me a troll. I don't care. I'll be a troll. Who gives a shit? We can troll you too. All right. All right, man. Have a good night. Good seeing you again, and we'll chat later. Signing out from sunny Southern California. All right. Have a good one. Good night, gentlemen.